This is an initiative from two NGOs working in Kerala, Kottayam Nature Society and Alapi Naturalist Society. So this is, and today we are lucky to have Smita Daniel with us. I mean, she is very passionate about lorises. She don't talk any other animals other than loris, I think. Uh, okay, so a small brief about her. Smita Daniel has been working on slender lorises in the past 8 years. Her journey began when she rescued two baby slender lorises at IIC in 2009. Well, she thought they were babies because they were too small to be monkeys. So, on researching, she discovered that they were not babies, rather, they were full grown adults, which got confirmed when one of them caught a flying cockroach and ate up like a bar of chocolate. So, this incident inspired her to go into the forest of Western Ghats and study these little primates up close. Her research has focused on the Malabar slender loris, which is one among the least known primates of the world. So I think about slender loris, she'll talk more about it. I don't want to read about all those things. So over to you, Smita. Thank you so much to agreeing to give a talk.
Thank you, David. Hi, people. This is a little weird that I'll be talking to my computer, but everything has a first time. So my journey on the lorises began 8 years ago, and I'm still at it. Uh, I'm going to start by explaining what primates are, because lorises are not monkeys. But if they're not monkeys, what are they? So primates generally can be it can be classified into two groups, that is the prosimians and the simians. The prosimians are a group of primates that are the lorises, the lemurs of Madagascar, the ai, the bush babies. So these are all grouped into prosimians, and they are very primitive. All the other monkeys, apes, human beings, uh, everything else come under the simians. Now, if you look at the South Indian primates, except for the slender loris, all the others are simians. That is, you have the lion-tailed macaque, the Nilgiri langur, the bonnet macaque, and the grey langur. Okay, now if you look at the evolution, when did all this evolve? So prosimians evolved like the first. They were the first primates to evolve from the early primate. So they're very primitive. All the characters that they have are very primitive and very different from all the other monkeys and apes that you see. So if you see after the prosimians, you have the New World monkeys, then you have the Old World monkeys, and then you have the hominids, and that's how it keeps going on. But then the prosimians, the characters and the features that they have is very different from what you see now. Okay, how did my journey begin? Why the slender loris and why not the other animals that people are so interested in? So back in 2011, I was working in Bangalore where I rescued a slender loris, a pair of slender loris, and it was quite small. It was this little one that I rescued. It was so small that I assumed it to be a young one of uh, a monkey, and we tried feeding it some milk, that is esbilac. It's a portion that we give to animals. It did not like, or it did not prefer drinking milk. Then we fed it some banana. It licked the banana, but it did not quite like it. So we kept wondering, what would this loris eat? What does the loris eat? And we kept looking online, but back then not much was available online like it's available now. So then what happened, one cockroach was flying, it caught the cockroach and started eating it up. And then we're like, oh, it's an adult. So curiosity led me into the wild, because I wanted to study them up close. But my journey did not begin very easily. It's not like I walked into the jungle and I found them easily. So the first night when I was in the forest, we searched, we looked in the forest. We kept walking for hours together. We walked for 6 hours and did not find even one loris. I was tired. I was exhausted. My legs were giving up. So I sat under a tree and I was waiting for my tracker. My tracker did not give up. So he kept looking for a loris, and suddenly from a distance, he kept shouting, Madam, madam, look up, look up, look up. And I looked up, and there was a loris peeping right at me all this while. So that was my first sight of a loris, and it was so amazing that I couldn't stop. Um, when you say lorises, there are two kinds of lorises. One is the slow loris, which is nice and big. You can see this is a slow loris. They are large. And then you have the slender loris. The slender lorises are called slender loris because their arms are very thin and slender. And you can actually hold them in your arms. They are so small. What are the difference between the slow loris and the slender loris? Slow lorises are large teddy bear-like animals. The smallest is around 250 grams. So the big one becomes this big. So the slow loris that you find in India, Nycticebus bengalensis, is the largest slow loris. But slender lorises, on the other hand, are very small. They are from 85 grams, and the largest slender loris is 390 grams. The slow lorises have small tails, but slender lorises do not have any tails. It's so weird to have a primate without tails. Slow lorises are the only primates on earth that have a venom bite. So they have certain branchial glands tucked under their armpit. They suck it up into the mouth and mix it up with the saliva and then give a venom bite. The venom can kill many animals. Sometimes it gives an allergic reaction to the human beings, and sometimes human beings can die with the allergic reaction. Slender lorises do not have any venom. Yes, they do have a very bad stinging bite, but they do not have venom in them. Then lethal bite, yes, the slow lorises are lethal, slender lorises are not lethal bites. The slow lorises prefer vegetarian. They both are omnivorous, but then slow lorises love eating vegetables, vegetarian food. They eat the bark of the bamboo, they eat the fruits, and then yes, they do eat a little bit of insects. But slender lorises are predominantly insectivores. 96% of their diet is insects. They love insects, especially the Malabar slender loris that I work eats only insects. Okay, now let's look at how many slender lorises and slow lorises are there. Slow lorises has 8 species. That means it's a larger group. It has more subspecies under these species. But slender lorises has only 2 species and 6 subspecies. Now, among these 6 slender lorises, only 2 are in India, and we have only 1 slow loris in India. Where are the slow lorises? The slow lorises you can in India are found only in Assam and in Tripura region. So this northeast region is where you have the slow lorises in India. But we have 2 different kinds of slender lorises in India. That is, we have the Mysore slender loris, that is this gray one, and then you have the Malabar slender loris. Where are they found? The Malabar slender loris is found in this red region. They're found only in the Western Ghats. They're not found anywhere else in the world. They're found only in the Western Ghats, and that too in the wet forests of Western Ghats. Whereas the Mysore slender loris is found across the Indian subcontinent, everywhere where there is no Malabaricus. But then you will not see overlapping of their home range, or you will not see overlapping of their habitats. They're very geographically isolated. You will never find them together. How do you find out? All the lorises look very alike. How do you find out? The only way you can find out the difference between the subspecies is one, their body color, which is very similar, but you have very slight variations. And 2, you have to look at the circumocular patch. The circumocular patch, the distance between this patch. So for the Malabar slender loris, this patch is round. Whereas for the Mysore slender loris, this patch will be diamond shape or oval shape. See, it's round, but here it's diamond shape, and the gap is more, and here the gap is less. So this is how you find out the difference. But even in spite of knowing so much, so I did a lot of literature survey. I looked at these images. I was sure of what they look like. And then I go into the forest to find this. Can you spot the loris? This is a loris. And this is a good sighting. This is on a very good day. You can actually see the body. That's how much. So that is how much you normally see in the wild. Yes. Lorises are very secretive. You can live a life your lifetime with the loris in your garden, and you won't even know they exist in your garden. So they are strictly nocturnal. They do not like the light. Their eyes are specialized for it. So they have really large eyes with special layers called tapetum lucidum. And these layers help them to see better in the night. And they're very sensitive to our light. Even when we use white light, they don't like it. So this nocturnal, they're predominantly insectivores. They love their insects. They are solitary. Unlike other primates that prefer to be in groups, lorises prefer to be alone. They're solitary, and their home range is around 100 meters. So if you spot one loris, you need to normally walk another 100 meters to spot the next one. They're highly territorial. They have territorial fights all the time. And lorises with scars, with one eye, arms broken, and all are common in their natural habitat. How do they communicate? They communicate with high pitched whistles. They have different kinds of whistles for different kind of communication. In fact, even to space themselves, to tell them, okay, this is my territory and this is where I am in my home. They even communicate that with whistles. So you'll find different kinds of whistles in the night saying different things. They are high, they depend on the undergrowth. That what does an undergrowth mean? When you have a tree, you have the branches of the tree, and they depend on the connectivity between two trees to go from one tree to another tree, because lorises cannot jump. They're anatomically incapable of jumping beyond 0.3 meters. So that means if a tree is not connected with, it could be through climbers or leaves or branches, it needs some kind of connectivity. If it cannot connect to the next tree, then the loris will have to climb down the tree, walk across on the ground, and then get on to the other tree. So understory is very important, and even for the protection. So if the lorises are threatened, what do? They have a defense mechanism where they will start walking slowly and then they freeze. They freeze when they are scared. And defense mechanism, okay, cryptic movement is when they walk really slow. So a lot of people think that lorises are very slow moving animals. No, actually they're not. They're very fast. They can actually move from one branch to another branch within seconds. They're really fast. But then when they feel the threat, when they feel that a predator is around them, then they start moving really slow so that the predator do not detect them. And then they freeze if they're in like hard danger. Another reason why they use cryptic movement is to catch their prey. They slowly walk towards the prey and then catch it with a sudden grip. Okay, so this is how a loris moves from one tree to another tree. So these two trees are connected, and this is how they move. If you see, the gap between the two trees is only so much. So if you see, all the four limbs of the lorises are highly specialized. They are like hands. All four limbs are very similar. You see, even the hind limb looks like a hand, because they will have to hold on to their substratum all the time, as they cannot jump. Okay. Moving on. Unlike other animals or other mammals, normally the male will have a protrusion, that is the penile protrusion, but the female generally will have no protrusion. But on the contrary, in lorises, the female has a protrusion and the male doesn't. To prove this, look at the next slide. So the females in lorises have a protrusion and the males don't. And the females are larger than the males. The males are the size of a juvenile, whereas the females are large. And birth rate of lorises uh, is up to 1 or 2 per litter, but in Malabaricus, I've only seen 1. So how do they carry their young ones? It's very interesting. So when the lorises are small or just born, they carry the lorises on their belly. As the size increases, they prefer to carry them on their back. And then when the lorises get really large, they start, and then when the lorises get really large, they start parking the lorises in the babies in different places. So they'll park the babies in bushy areas where it cannot be detected by predators, and the mother will go and hunt for insects. And slowly the mother trains the baby loris, and weans her out. And then the juvenile, when the baby grows into a juvenile, the juvenile is supposed to go and find her own territory or her own home range. So she's kicked out of the house and she has to find her own house. Okay. Now, how are the elephants? How are the elephants useful? Because a lot of my work was in Arlam Wildlife Sanctuary, which is an elephant interaction zone. And though everybody was scared of the elephants were my volunteers. They really kept me safe. They're very humble, hospitable giants. They kept all the people in their houses at night. If the people tried coming out of the houses in the night, the elephant made sure to chase them back. They kept me safe in the forest because no human beings used to come and trouble me in the middle of the night. And elephants used to cut across pathways through the forest to help me conduct my surveys. It's very difficult to keep cutting through the dense foliage in the night, but elephants help me do that. And they kept occasionally coming and peeping in, but they never harm me till now. Also because we use low intensity red lights, which the elephants are comfortable with. Like all nocturnal animals generally are comfortable with the red lights, which is low intensity red lights. And the lorises are predominantly insectivores, so the elephant dropping attracts a lot of insects, which the lorises really love. Okay, now talking about threats to lorises. Lorises do not, as far as we know, they do not have many natural threats. Apart from the brown palm civet that you see here, no animals have been found to feed on the loris. And we haven't found loris parts in any of the fecal material of the other animals. But depending on the weight or depending on the available predators or the behavior of the lorises, we could predict that these animals like the owls, the snakes could be the potential predators, but the civet alone has been cited to feed on a loris. But then the loris have lots of threats from humans. We human beings are the largest predators. First of all, the biggest threat is the habitat loss. Now, how would you know if if our habitat is lost or not? Because one thing about loris is that lorises love to be among human beings. They do not live in deep forests. They live in the vicinity of human beings. They love degraded forests. But how degraded are they supposed to be? That was a question I wanted to address through my research. So lorises, though they live in the vicinity of the forest or the edge of the forest, they still prefer some kind of connectivity in the trees. They still like some kind of they like mild disturbances. They do not like too much disturbance. So how would you find out if a loris habitat is degraded or not, or if the loris habitat is destroyed? When you walk into the forest and if you sight too many lorises in one spot, then probably the loris's land has been fragmented, or the habitat has been fragmented, because lorises are not social creatures. They do not like to be in large numbers. They do sleep together, but then throughout the night they like to be spread out. But then if you find too many in one place, then probably it's the breeding time, or the habitat has undergone degradation, and hence the loris is not finding enough space to run around. And another way of finding if the loris's habitat is destroyed is if you find lorises on the floor. Like I told you, if there is connectivity in the canopy or if there's connectivity above, the lorises would just use them to go from tree to tree. There is no specific tree that the loris prefer. It's only the insects. Wherever insects are, the lorises are there. They like to go from one tree to another tree. But then if you find lorises on the ground, then probably it's undergone degradation. That means the habitats are fragmenting. Sometimes what happens is when you try going into the forest, you walk for a very long time and you don't spot loris at all. And then suddenly in certain patches, you find loris. There again, the habitat has got fragmented. Probably the entire forest has become a deep evergreen forest, which is not a preferred habitat for loris. So we are still studying as to find out the exact location or the exact habitat preference of the loris. Very soon I'll be able to let you know. Another interesting feature about the lorises is that they feed on poisonous insects. So this is one thing that I missed out. They can feed on any kind of insects because they have a very low metabolic rate, and hence they also have specialized enzymes in the urine and in their saliva. So what they do is they either smother saliva on a toxic insect, or they wash the insects with the urine to remove all the toxicity from the insect poison, and then they eat up the insects. So they can actually form very good farmers' friends. What kind of threats? Yes, we have habitat loss, which is a big threat, and then we have another threat where lorises are traded for as pets. No, mainly the slow lorises. The slender lorises are also traded for as pets, but then they are kept as pets to ward off bad omen. It's not as they are not kept for pleasure. They're actually kept in the house so that the bad omen do not enter into the house. And parts of the lorises are used to make medicines, which and then they're also used as voodoo dolls for black magic. So for conducting black magic, different parts of the lorises are pierced when they're still alive. Yes, in almost all the habitats of the loris, they are regarded as a bad omen. Sometimes the people think that looking at a loris will bring up about bad luck, so then they have the urge to kill the loris, or they return back home. They also believe that in certain parts, they believe that eating a loris eye would give them good eyesight. So lorises are killed and their eyes are just gouged out and eaten. In certain parts, there are certain tribals who carry lorises in boxes, and they do a ritual where the lorises will lick the wound or lick the parts of the body that is infected. So for example, if you have cancer and the loris licks the part that has a tumor, then you are healed from cancer. So that's the kind of belief. So the lorises are forced to lick different parts of our body and infected parts and stuff. Parts of lorises like the liver, the kidney are used to make medicine, which has no scientific evidence of having any effect. There are certain parts where they believe that if a woman sees a loris, she will become barren. And hence the lorises are hidden away from the woman. In olden days, the lorises were also used as a compass because there's a belief that the loris will turn in the opposite direction of the sun. So that way they could predict which direction the boat has to move into. So yes, so that's it. So that problem doesn't stop there. Now another problem that the lorises face is in highly degraded places where the lorises have to get onto the floor. They're so small, they're so tiny that people cannot see them. So even cyclists can run over them. And probably the cyclists would think that it is just a rock that they have run over. But that's how, this is one of the road kills of, this is one loris that has got an accident, a road accident loris. So many lorises die because of being run over, and you wouldn't even know that you have ran over a loris. Another problem is a lot of people internationally are aware of the slow lorises, but they're not aware of the slender lorises. So what happens is when the lorises get traded out, they think it is the young one of the of the slow loris. So a lot of people have prophesied that slender lorises and slow lorises are venomous creatures. A lot of rumors are running around. Even Animal Planet, they think that slender lorises and slow lorises are one and the same, and they have all the characters mixed up. So that is another problem that the slender lorises have. They still are not known to the outside world, and there's a lot of identity crisis that they go through. We have yet another problem is when the naturalists, a lot of naturalists in their goodwill, they go and they rescue the lorises from their own habitat, take them into the forest and leave them in deep forest. So this is a big problem because lorises do not live in deep forest. They live in the fringes of forest. They live among human beings. They will live in the garden where you are, but then you will not know they exist. So these people, if they spot a loris, what they do is they pick up the loris and then take it to the deep forest and leave it there. And of course, the loris won't survive. Another problem is trafficking case. When a loris is trafficked, the forest department or the rescuers cannot make out the difference between the two subspecies. So what happens is the Mysis slender loris is released into the Western Ghats, or the Malabar slender loris is released in the other deciduous forest, and then they can't survive. So lorises have a very low tolerance level to stress. They cannot survive. Even in the zoos, the lorises are kept in cages and in broad daylight. So this is something that the lorises cannot survive. Another thing is because the loris has a habit of freezing when it's scared, trafficking the loris is very easy. People just put it in their pockets or shove it under their undergarments and travel. Because the loris will not move, it will not make a sound, and it's very easy for people to traffic them. Like here, the loris is just being taken around in a basket. You won't even know it's there. It won't make a noise like other animals. So this is one such case where this well-wisher had rescued the loris from its own habitat, and then one of my volunteer asked him to leave it where he rescued. So this is a typical habitat of a loris. This is the Mysis slender loris. Yeah, so this is what happens. Another problem that it happens is people do not know that lorises are a different animal altogether. Because it's so small, they assume it to be a young one of a bonnet macaque. So they take the baby lorises and actually, in their goodwill, reunite the baby loris with the bonnet macaque. So that is what they do, which is also disturbing because both are different animals altogether. Okay, so so this is another threat that they face. This is photography. Now, an upcoming problem is people are interested in photographing lesser known primates or elusive primates or secretive primates. So what they do is they give money to the trackers, and the trackers go and catch the lorises and come, and the lorises are photographed in broad daylight. Now this affects their eyes. They are not equipped to see light at all. Absolutely not. Even when we do not spot lorises when there is moonlight. So when moonlight can disturb their eyes, imagine the sunlight. So what happens is once the photographs are taken in broad daylight, we do not know what happens to the loris after that. Are they let back into its habitat? Has the loris survived the stress? We do not know. So this is one problem that's happening in Tattekad. And slow lorises are taken around in Indonesia like this. They are very famous pets now. But slender lorises are not too far from here. And this is another case of black magic, which you see in slender lorises as well. Okay, so any questions? Can I take questions?
Yes, please. Do you want to take the questions now or at the end of it? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, I can take questions now. I mean, I kept my talk short so I like
please.
Q&A. I kept it short so that I can answer people's question and give more information with respect to what they want to know.
Yeah, I just opened the chat box, so those who have questions, please ask the questions.
Yeah.
There was a message in Facebook. Manori said they have seen raptors are feeding on slender loris in Sri Lanka.
Oh wow! In Sri Lanka, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good sight. Can I play the call of the slender loris? I'm so sorry. I'm stuck in Mysore. I don't have all my data over here. So I'll definitely, Soumya, I'll definitely be able to play the call, but not today. I don't have it here. Okay, let me see. Were there any instances where you have seen the loris interact with any other animal? Yes, I have seen a loris. Not they did not have a direct interaction. There was a Malabar pit viper very close to the loris, and the loris kept playing around, and the Malabar and disturbing the Malabar pit viper. But then it was also the breeding season, so it could be one of their dance or whatever. Apart from that, we haven't seen the loris interact with any other animal. Have you come across the possible rational explanation for these myths and beliefs around lorises? I am trying to find that out myself because there is no rational explanation as far as I know, but then I need to do a little more research to find out if there is any rational explanation. Because, for example, the few animals like Varaha is the wild boar. In certain parts of India, wild boar is known as God, whereas in certain other parts, like in Bhimgad, it is known as a demon in an animal form. So, but in lorises, if you see every part of its habitat, all places, it's regarded as a bad omen. I do not know why, and I am looking at it. I will have to dig in further. Can you? Okay. When's the breeding season? Okay, the lorises breed during the rainy season, that is July to September, and then they give birth from December to Jan, and then they start weaning from depends from area to area. So in my field, they start weaning from the end of February, March. But in Sri Lanka, you see lorises being carried even in April. Have you come across the okay? Do they form troops and have rivalry like the other primates? No, they don't form troops. As far as I have seen, see, I have studied the loris in its most favorite habitat, like undisturbed habitats, because only then I can compare it with other habitats. So, in a habitat which is undisturbed, they do not form troops and have rivalry, as far as I have observed. But then it would be interesting to see in disturbed habitat, but such kind of work has not been done yet, because first of all it's very difficult to identify them because they're very tiny, and then to identify each individual you need to tag them, and getting tagging permissions in India is very difficult. So probably if we get permissions, then probably we can do that. Any predator for slender loris apart from the brown palm civet? Nothing has been nothing has been gone into literature. But they do have potential predators like the owls and snakes. But that is based on the available predators in their habitat. Even cats are considered predators. But apart from this brown palm civet, I haven't noted any other animal feeding on it. Is there any cure available for slow loris bite? I think an antihistamine would do because it gives an anaphylactic shock. So an antihistamine should do for human beings. What is the possible reason for negative sexual dimorphism? No idea. I don't know. They're very primitive creatures. They evolved far before the current animals, current primates. So I have no idea how the negative sexual dimorphism. I really don't know. And no study has been done yet on lorises.
Sorry to butt in
this regard.
Yeah? Or do you want to continue? There's a lot of questions are piling up. You want to answer all the questions, or you want to continue and then come back?
No, I will continue with the questions.
Okay, fine.
Because my presentation is over, I kept it short.
No problem.
What is the gestation period of both the loris? It's the gestation period more or less is 2 months. How do loris mark its territory? That is interesting. They urinate. They urinate like other animals. They urinate and mark their territory. And they also have calls. They distinguish the territory based on calls. So that's calls and urine. That's how they mark. It was very informative, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Can you please share your contact details? Sure, maybe after the talk. Tamil Nadu species name, ma'am. Loris lidicerinus or Mysoslenderloris. Myso doesn't have any slenderloris, but then it's called Mysoslenderloris because the lab that initiated work on lorises is in Mysore. That's my lab. What is the lifespan in the wild? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what is the lifespan. Gestation, I already told you. Young stay with the mother, I told you. They stay for like 2 to 3 months, but it depends from area to area. In some places, they are staying longer. In some places, they're staying shorter. Antidote for slow loris? No, I don't think there are any antidote. But a lot of venom work is happening in Nana Nicaris's lab. So they should be out with they should be out with some antidote. But right now, anaphylactic shocks, so antihistamines are being administered. I missed the first part of this extremely interesting talk. Will you be uploading this talk on YouTube? I think it is getting uploaded, right, David?
Yes, it will be uploaded in YouTube. And also it will be, you can go and check Kottayam Nature Society Facebook page also. It is there.
Okay, cool. What about canopy bridging to make continuity of the canopy? It is worked in slow lorises. Yes, this canopy bridging has been done in many places in slow lorises. But when it comes to slender lorises, not much research has happening in India. So we haven't reached that level yet. So my work would be proving what kind of habitat it requires. But then a lot of work has to be done to find out where the fragments are, where the canopy bridging is required, where it's not required, what kind of trees can be grown there. So this is something that I'm looking at right now. We need to identify those places first. Hi, Smita madam, I'm Nagesh. I saw slender loris many times in bush. Is there a particular reason for that? They live in bushes, Nagesh. That is why they are there. They live anywhere from 15 meters to 5 meters. You know, they are found on the ground also. They even go up to 30 meters. Okay. Any study or information regarding the gestation of slender loris? Yes, there is one study by Anna Nicaris and Rasmussen. You can check that out. That was done from Duke University. It's a very interesting paper. Hi, you said there is not much awareness about these lorises. Anything being done? I'm trying to do, but then if you want to join me, I'll be more than happy to have you on board. We can do something together. But yes, awareness is required. People should know that they are not bad omen. They are just normal animals and they have survived millions of years, even far before we have come into existence. And it would be really sad to see them going extinct in the near future. What has been the effect of introduced habitats like eucalyptus? The problem with eucalyptus plants are that they have an antagonistic character towards insects. Lorises need connectivity. I mean, they can survive without connectivity, but they cannot survive without insects. So where you do not find insects, you do not find loris. But then where you find lorises, like your garbage dump, you'll find more lorises around your garbage dump. You'll find more lorises around your cattle sheds. So you'll find more lorises where there are more insects. So that is the preferred habitats. What is the lifespan of loris? No idea. At what age are they regarded as juvenile? When they turn around 6 months, 6 months, 7 months, they become juveniles. I have heard that slender loris urinate on its palm and apply it all over its body. Yes, is so that it can keep the ticks away. No, it's not so that they can keep the ticks away. The slender loris's urine and saliva, like I told you, have enzymes that neutralize the toxics. So what they do is they apply urine all over their palm and then put their hand on an anthill. And you know that ants bite. So this bite probably gets neutralized because of the enzymes in the urine. So then they allow the ants to climb onto the hand And when the loris hands are on their hand, they just lap it up. They just lick up all the ants on their from their hand. That's a very interesting thing. So they do that with even poisonous insects, other poisonous insects. So ticks, probably they will eat up the ticks. I don't know. We do not know what all the loris eat. We know that they eat a wide variety of insects, but we cannot pinpoint on what insects they eat and what they don't. That work has not been done. Okay, everybody wants to know the lifespan of the loris. Nobody knows the lifespan of the loris. There's a speculation that it could be 14 years, but in the wild, nobody knows. Nobody knows in the wild. What lighting is used to spot loris is if it is sensitive to bright light. Yes. So we use a low illumination red light because lorises cannot see red. So when you use red light, it's very comfortable on the loris eyes. It's practically like no light for it. So we use low illuminated red light, which is enough for us to see where we are going. And also it helps us to spot the loris better. Any organization working on conservation of urban lorises in Bangalore, PFA has started, People for Animals have started a project. I'm collaborating with them. So you can contact them if you want to get more involved, or you can directly contact me and we can start something together. How many lorises you have been recorded in your study area? Okay, that's very difficult, Muthu Krishnan, because generally when you see bonnet macaques or say even lion-tail macaques, you can identify the individual. You spend some time with them based on their body size, the tail, the shape. You can identify each individual, but it's not the same in the lorises. You can't see anything in the night. You will just see the eyes. That's it. That's how much you can see. So the photo that I have here is the most that you can see of a loris. It's very difficult to see a loris. So when in this kind of a situation, you wouldn't know if you've seen the same loris twice. Also, in my habitat, though the density is high, because my habitat structure is really good and favorable for the lorises, I spot around 2 to 5 maximum per night. That's it. 2 lorises to 5 lorises per night. That's all I can spot. So I will not know if I'm seeing the same loris over and over again every day. So to find out the number of lorises is difficult. What's the lifespan? No, I don't know. What? Okay, again, eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is not a good idea. Do these lorises have any peculiar courtship ritual? Yes, they do. They do have a peculiar courtship where I think 4 males were trying to approach 1 female, and in another place there were 3 females trying to approach 1 male. I did see both, but then I couldn't observe it up close because the place was very dense. One interesting thing about when they're courting, the female loris actually hangs upside down like a bat. You know, she'll hold on to the twig and hang upside down, and then the male will climb onto the loris, and they have like a 69 position, and they make a noise like, and that is very loud. You won't, and that's how they court. That is how, and that's very interesting. So that happened quite high though. That was like 25 meters high, and it happened at 2 a.m. So that is the only once I spotted them courting. Where do they rest during the day? They sleep in vine tangles, either in vine tangles or in holes. So lorises do not make nests. So they go for areas that has natural nest-like appearance, where it's like tangled up and they have a nest-like appearance. So the lorises curl up and they sleep there. So in places which is not highly degraded, they will find like 1 or 2 lorises sleeping, but it's very difficult to find their sleeping sites. But in places where the habitat is fragmented and degraded, you'll find about 6 to 7 lorises together. And in few places in recent times, I've heard that you find more than that, 10 lorises and so, which is not a good idea. What is the status as per conservation? Until last year, it was near threatened, but now the conservation status is going to change. This year, it will be vulnerable, I guess. but until last year, it is near threatened. The lorises in Sri Lanka are endangered. The red slender lorises are endangered, whereas the gray slender lorises that are in India are near threatened. Do these pet lorises lose their eyesight after certain time as people expose them to daylight? That is something that I want to find out, because I do not know if I haven't spoken to anybody yet who have had the loris for such a long time, and I do not know if the eyesight is still good or bad. But that is a good thing that I would like to look at. What is the status as per conservation? I just answered that. What is the reason for their preference of degraded habitats? Okay, there are three things that the lorises are looking for: connectivity, uh, um, insects, lots and lots of insects, and some kind of protection from humans. Because wherever humans are, the other predators are lesser in number, so that way the lorises can move around. Two, where the humans are, there you'll have lots of you'll have lots of disturbance, and the disturbance helps the creepers to grow and small trees to grow. So you have like multiple branches in the same tree, because where all the humans cut on the tree, you'll have branches growing. So the trees will have a more bushier nature, and the trees will be shorter, and there'll be more connectivity because of the disturbance in wherever humans are. And wherever humans are, you'll have lots of cattle, you'll have a lot of garbage, so which attracts more variety of insects and more numbers of insects, which is a good treat for lorises. The lorises love insects, so that is why they like to be around human beings. I have not found any loris in deep forests. I hope I've answered Rose best. Please do let me know if I haven't answered your question. Are lorises spread across the Western Ghats or specific in certain areas? No, they're spread. The Malabar slender loris is spread across Western Ghats. So you will find them right beyond Goa, right from Mumbai to down south up to Kattegat, and beyond that also. How many offsprings do they produce at once? One or two maximum. Do city lights have any effects on their eyesight and behavior? The lorises in the cities haven't been studied yet, so we do not know. Lorises are one of the least known primate of the world. Not much work has been done, and it's very difficult to do work also. It's not like you walk into the forest or you walk into the habitat and you spot one. It's very difficult to work on them. It's very difficult to observe them, and behavior and all is like super difficult. So it's knowing such, first of all, we need to know their natural habitat, their preferred habitat. Then when you look at other habitats, we'll know if there is any difference, how much degradation is there. And city lights having effect on their eyes is something that I would like to look at, and I'm still looking at that. You'll need to give me a little more time to finish my work. Maybe once this COVID situation is lifted, I will be able to finish that work. That is halfway through. It is known.
Smita, there's some questions from Facebook Live also.
Sure.
What is the current status in urban population in and around Bangalore?
Current status as in are lorises there, or are lorises not there, or
no, in Bangalore, in and around in Bangalore.
Okay, so current status. Okay, I'm going to tell you in general. One, yes, there are lorises in and around Bangalore. There are lorises inside Bangalore. We do not know where they are, which pockets they are. That is not something that has been published yet, so I do not know where exactly they are. I know they are in IISc campus. Two, lorises are being trafficked in Bangalore. That is for sure. And they're used in black magic. A lot of black magic is being done on lorises in Bangalore, in houses, outside houses. So yes, that is the status of lorises in Bangalore.
Okay. Have you seen any interaction between lorises individuals in the wild? Can you tell a bit more about
interactions between individuals? Yes, they do interact during breeding, during fights. The Malabar slender loris, there's an interesting character where the sibling from the previous year, or the litter from the previous year, the daughter will come to help the mother with the current year's delivery. So she will be with the mother when the mother is pregnant, and help in the delivery, and then the new individual is weaned out. So that is when you find groups of 2 or 3 individuals running around. So, and all females, both females. So this is a very interesting behavior that I observed in Malabaricus. I haven't studied the Lidicarianus, I haven't studied the Mysis lentularius, but then similar work has not been cited there. My work was exclusively on Malabar's lentularius, but yes, I have seen the other ones as well. Yeah.
Okay, there's Lester Pereira and Manori Gunawardhane, both are from Sri Lanka. He said once, Lester said the main prey of could be slender loris. Have you got any experience with the other owls? Have you seen any
That's
other
the thing.
owls?
No, in India, we haven't seen any owls feeding on the lorises.
Okay.
In India, the only site of feeding, and even in literature, the entire literature, the only instance where direct feeding was done was by the Malabar, the brown palm civet, which I have reported. Apart from that, if you've seen other animals feed on lorises in Sri Lanka, probably it should be reported, because it's
I
not.
Think Manori is saying we have found them taken by raptors also.
Oh, that's an interesting study. I would like to get in touch with her. If you can put me across with her, we could extend the work and see how it is done. I would like to know which raptor.
There's a question from Somdat. Why do the two subspecies have so different habitats?
That is because the Malabar lentularius prefers wet forests and the Mysis lentularius prefers dry forests. I do not know the evolutionary reason, but it could be because of geographical isolation, because the Western Ghats came and separated the two. It could be. That could be one of the reason, and they just did not inbreed. Okay. But apart from this, we do not know, because we have no genetic work has been done on the animal, so it's difficult to predict what the exact reason was. But for now, we know geographical isolation is the only reason.
Okay, there is a question. I mean, there is a population which you'll see a lot of them in one of the places. I don't want to mention the place, but you know the place.
Yes.
But why, and what is the reason? What are the threats there? I don't want to take the names of that place. There's a place in Western
habitat fragmentation, habitat destruction. Habitat fragmentation and habitat destruction. So what has happened in this place? Looks like the lorises are clumped into small pockets of their fragmented habitats, and because of which they're all clumped in one place. I know the place, and that's not a good habitat. I mean, there are lots of lorises. Anybody can sight the loris. Even in daytime, you can sight the loris, but that's not a good thing. If a loris can be sighted in the daytime, then that habitat is undergone degradation. Generally, that is how it is.
Do you want to go through some more questions? Is it there? Let me check.
73 questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I closed the chat box. So if you can put down your email ID also, they can directly contact you.
Okay. Should I?
Probably you take 2-3 more questions, please. The relevant ones.
I can take more.
Okay, please
time,
go ahead.
I can take more.
Yeah, there is time. Yeah.
Okay. So what are the major insects in the ficus? Okay. I have been with the loris for 8 years. I've never seen it defecate. I do not know why. So even when the lorises are trafficked, when they are captured, nobody has collected the fecal samples yet. So we do not know what insects are there in the fecals. The fecal samples have not been tested yet. What advantages does the low metabolic rate offer for the lorises? They are able to digest toxic animals. They are able to digest the toxins in the insects. So that is one of the major advantage that the loris have. That is a disadvantage to us, because we cannot detect it with thermal image cameras or thermal image binoculars. That didn't work at all for lorises. In fact, I don't think that will work for lorises. Okay. What are the trees they prefer for shelter? They prefer any tree. They don't have any preference. Any tree is fine. As long as it has connectivity, it has some bushy nature, it is fine. It's fine with any tree. Lorises have any larger animal in their food items? Yes, they do eat insect. They do eat lizards, spiders. So lizards are the biggest, I guess. Any sanctuaries declared for them? Not yet. So you say that lorises are seen in human vicinity and not in deep evergreen forests. Yes, that's right. In certain deep evergreen forests, they might have been they might have been detected, spotted. They might have been spotted, but their preferred habitats are not deep evergreen forests. They do not like deep evergreen, basically because the canopy is too high for the loris, and the bark of the tree is also very thick for the loris. So at that height, the insect diversity will be too less. So the lorises do not prefer high canopy forests without any kind of connectivity at the bottom. And anyone can repeat the Duke University paper. I don't understand that. Okay. Forest fire. That has not been that's not been proven yet. We do not know if forest fire would be a threat to them. But forest fire in general is a threat to all animals. But we haven't seen in terms of lorises yet. Both subspecies in India, Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats. The northernmost extent, Godavari River for the Malabar, for the Mysore slender loris, and Malabar slender loris is south of Mumbai. But work has to be done. It's possible that they have gone extinct in many places. Why lorises have huge forward facing eyes? That is because they need to see in the night. So when like all animals, all nocturnal animals including the owls, they generally have forward facing eyes to allow more light to pass so that they can see in the night. What may be the reason for their venomous nature? That is the slow lorises, right? For defense, I guess the defense would be the reason. Please suggest how to relocate if one is rescued from human inhabited localities. We should look around next night to find they are more in their local. Leave it back. Okay. When you rescue a loris, you need to know if it has been rescued from its own habitat or whether the loris has been displaced by a trafficker or someone else. So that has to be seen. But then you need to find its habitat. Its habitat, like I showed you one video. Maybe you contact me or you contact someone who's working on the lorises, and then before you release them, because we need to be sure that you do not release them in deep forests. What are the usual methods which biologists use to measure the lifespan of a primate? They will tag the primate and they stay with the. I mean, there are long-term studies that happen in the wild, so that is how you know that the primate lives for that long. I like to know if there's any conservation going on in Sri Lanka. Yes, there are a lot of people working in the conservation of lorises in Sri Lanka. You can contact Gamage, Saman Gamage. He is one of the people I know. I mean, I have not met him, but I have read his papers. So maybe you should contact him. And you can also contact Anna Nikaris because she's also in touch with a lot of organizations there. Do they prefer water body near to its habitat? That's not a preference. I mean, they can be anywhere. They just need insects. They need good connectivity and a little bit of degradation, and they can survive. The Malabar slender has not gone to the wet forests of Sri Lanka, whereas the Mysore one is in dry side of Sri Lanka. Any specific the Malabar and Mysore have not gone to Sri Lanka. The Malabar and Mysore slender lorises are found only in India. The Sri Lankan subspecies are completely different ones. They are not found in. They're not found anywhere else apart from Sri Lanka. So. Okay. So, do you think booming wildlife photography is a major issue? How ethically someone can take a photograph? One, Loris, you need to use red lights or put red filters on your lights when you take photographs of lorises or nocturnal animals. Number two, do not expose them to white light. Do not expose them to daylight. Do not encourage anybody to take photographs of lorises in daylight. Number two, do not take them off their branch. If you find a loris on a tree, just leave them there and try taking photos. It's going to be very difficult for you to take photographs while they're on the tree, but then that is the most ethical way of doing it. Do not displace them. Do not go and catch them, bring them down, and then take a photograph of them. That is so unethical, and do not encourage anybody to do that around you. Any particular reason for a bigger size of the female loris? I don't know. That's how they evolved, I guess. Mm. Uh, okay, Nisha Thomas would like to know what is the exact role they play in their respective habitat. Uh, they keep track of the insect diversity. See, a lot of insects that are poisonous cannot be eaten by other animals. The lorises can feed on them. And what from my studies, what I have found is a few insects that they feed on is also harmful to agriculture. So probably there's some kind of a relationship. I will be able to tell you more if you give me some time to assess my data. I'm right now currently working on the data. I will get back to you with those details. I think, David, the questions are done.
There's a few more questions from Facebook.
Okay. How
From
do I
Ashok
get them here? Okay.
Gupta. No, I'll read out.
Okay.
From Ashok Singh Gupta. I can hear them regularly in my campus adjacent to at Bangalore. Never saw them yet. I want to photograph at least once. Should I low intensity red light be okay? The tree cover is ample for 200 square meters.
Okay. Yes, low intensity red light is fine. So what we do is we buy this red cellophane sheets and put it on all our lights, because buying the filters is very expensive, and we cannot carry them around all the time. So we buy this red cellophane sheets, the transparent red sheets that they used to make wrappers of chocolates earlier. So we use that. We put it on all our lenses, and we put it on all our headlamps. So that is how we get red light. That should be good. This yes, low intensity red light is good. They're comfortable with that. And you might want to take pictures on a no moon night, because that time they're more active. They come out, and you will get a better shot.
Okay. What is the closest relative of loris?
Lemurs of Madagascar.
Okay. And okay, there was one question. I think, why did you select Arlam as a study area from Yadu? I think he's from Arlam only. That's why he asked the question.
Because lorises were found in the highest, from a distribution survey before, the highest density of lorises were found in Arlam. And also Arlam is the most apt habitat for the loris. And hence I thought doing my study in a place that's not degraded would be the first step in conserving an animal. So that's why I selected Arlam, though they have elephants there and carnivores there, but still I love Arlam.
Okay, I think we are done with most of the questions. Thank you so much, Mira. It was wonderful to hear you. A lot of information. On behalf of Kottayam Nature Society and Alapi Naturalist Society and all those who attended, we extend our thanks. Hope to hear from you more, and all the best for your future studies. And thank you all. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.